Welcome back to the Hoopty Hay Balers. Today we're going to rip this PTO housing off of this 1070. Alright, real quick, here's what's going on. This is a 1976 Case 1070. I had rebuilt the PTO 2 years ago and it started slipping again. Now it doesn't hold a load anymore and the PTO doesn't work at all. We're going to find out why. I think I know why, and the warning will be at the end of this video. I hope this video is going to help somebody to avoid the same mistake that I made. Let's get started. There you can see the top of the steering shaft there. That's where that fluid's been dumping out. That's pretty much the main leak. We're gonna have to pull the column apart and replace that seal. We're gonna start by pulling out all these bolts here. And I think I'm even gonna try and pull the 3-point brackets off at the same time and drop the whole assembly down, because I think that's what I had to do last time. Don't forget to undo that rod. I think that's the sensing rod for the 3-point. I'm going to remove these 2 pins on each side for the 3-point arms so we can get the entire assembly off the tractor. We're going to come back to that when I can get a good air hammer on that. Alright, I got that pin out. Ended up going to work, my real air hammer, and pounded that thing out. I took a couple-day break because I was tired of dealing with it. Messed the pin up a little bit. We'll have to do some work on that. And from wailing on it with the hammer, I actually messed up my snap ring groove a little bit. So I ended up grinding the end down where I had mushroomed it and pounding it out with the air hammer. Now I know you can get this housing off What we're taking off here is this whole housing off the back here. You can get it off without pulling those two side brackets off, but it's a lot harder to get it back on. And the last time I did this, I think I ended up taking that down anyways. So I'm just going to lead with that because it'll be a lot easier to get down. Because I mean, look at how much more open it is without those arms on there. So we're going to drain the oil and start ripping all the lines off and everything else. I'm going to start doing that probably tomorrow. It's about midnight again. Alright, this tractor has, I believe, 7 drain plugs. And this is the rearmost one, which also holds the most. And I think when you pull this, you'll get like 90% of the fluid out of the tractor. So I got 4 5-gallon buckets ready because I think it holds something like 15 gallons. And we're going to try and get all the fluid in the bucket without spilling any. Well, there's a little bit of water. The plan is to get as much hydraulic fluid on the floor as possible. And if you have that goal, when you do get hydraulic fluid all over the floor, you're not a failure. It's a win-win. I'm going to drain a little bit into this bucket until oil starts coming out, because there's definitely some water in the bottom. And I'm hoping to reuse the fluid here. Oh boy. Oh yeah. It looks pretty nasty, but that wasn't so bad. Until I have to do a bucket change, and then sure, I'll get covered in it. Most people would take the lid off the bucket, but I tell you what, these VP Racing buckets, the lids, they are on there tight. Okay, I got a finger in the hole. Push that bucket out of the way. Grab another one. Hope you get the aim right. Oh yeah, look at that. We blocked the light in the bucket. Oh shit. Oh boy, now I'm done. There's definitely some chunks coming out of there. That's not good. I hope that's not the PTO clutches, because those aren't cheap. Alright, there's not 7 drain plugs. So there's 4 more drain plugs, and they progressively get higher. And I believe, you know, like the one where the engine meets the transmission might only hold a gallon. You know, there's little compartments in here, and that's why they have a drain plug. There's almost like a baffle like in a gas tank. And you got to drain each individual section when you're changing the fluid. Because I'm only working back here, I might drain all of them just because this fluid looks like there's quite a bit of water in it. But for the housing that I'm doing, this is going to get the majority of the fluid out, as you saw. Alright, this is your pump. This fitting is 7/8. That's 1 1/4 inch. Yeah, remove these lines. And I might leave the pump on this time. I don't know if I'm going to take it off separate. Next we're going to take that little line off. Right there, it's 11/16. If you're hooking up a pressure gauge so that you can check the pressure to your PTO clutch, this is the one you tap into, because that one goes right to the PTO clutch. So you'll actually put a T in there with your, you can get a transmission pressure gauge from Harbor Freight and get the fittings to adapt to that. Put a T in there, and then it'll tell you if your lube circuit pressure is good. And that's one thing I want to mention. When I first rebuilt this PTO clutch, my lube circuit pressure was actually like 175 to 180 when it was warm. And according to the book, I think you want around 200. Everything I read online said 210 is fine. If you go more than that, you risk having the bypass valve open up because you're overpressurizing the system, and then you just end up dumping a whole bunch of hydraulic oil back into the case for no reason. So last time I had this slipping, I did put some extra shims in the PTO valve, the hydraulic valve that actually is the switch for the PTO. And I had put some extra shims in there, and I got the pressure up to about 208. If your trans pressure gauge on the dash is in the green, you're probably fine, because that's the pressure gauge that'll read the same pressure as what's going into the PTO clutch here. Mine was in the green, but it was still 20 or 30 psi lower than it could have been, and I wanted that PTO to be locking up hard. We got a little sensor that we got to disconnect the wire onto in this lower right hand corner. Coming around to the left side of the tractor, we have one more line right there that we got to take off. Alright, now we're going to remove our PTO guard. This is our link for our top link, and then we're going to remove both brackets for the hydraulic remotes. Alright, everything is disconnected now that needs to be disconnected. And now it's just the bolts that surround it. So we're going to grab the engine hoist, because I think hanging it's the best way instead of trying to juggle it on a floor jack. I'm going to use an engine hoist again, and we'll get this thing yanked off of there. Now when you're pulling this off, you have to be careful, because there's a pickup tube that goes kind of down into the bottom of the case, and the screen is plastic, and I'm pretty sure that screen is like $300. It's outrageous how expensive it is, and I don't think I replaced it last time because of that. Hopefully it's now I am doing this again, but just be mindful of that. If you pick it up from the top right here like I'm going to, it's going to want to swing this way, and that pickup's going to want to drag on the bottom of the case, and this thing's heavy, so it's very hard to correct that. So keep that in mind. We got the engine hoist in place. Now we're just going to remove the bolts. We're going to put a little bit of load on it, just so that when we start taking the bolts out, it doesn't drop. Alright, we got a little tension on that. Now we're going to remove all the bolts. Probably going to drain the pan too. Windy out there. Woo! Sounds like the barn's going to blow over. Don't worry, it's not insured. A couple of these are different. They got shoulders on them for centering the housing. See how it popped off there? That was the last one. Now if you're doing this for the first time, that might not pop off just like that. You might have to actually do some prying on it. I know mine was a little stubborn the first time around. Mine's pretty loose though, so we're just gonna keep giving her a couple yanks. There's a stud on my side that it's hanging on right now. So make sure all your hoses are still free so you don't rip anything off. Now this is one of those times you want to be really careful that you don't drop it on your foot. See how it wanted to swing down a little bit? Well, think that's definitely part of the problem. See, the PTO clutches are here, and they're supposed to be in there. I think that's probably the problem. Okay, so here's where I think I went wrong last time. This is the PTO clutch pack here. This is a hole that you can see. These are the actual clutch plates through that hole. And if you apply air to the oil feed, see how it moves? Now I don't have a rubber tip blowgun, so it's leaking a little bit at the fitting, but do you hear how much air is leaking out of that clutch housing? There should almost be, I would imagine, none, okay? So this clutch pack works pretty much just like an automatic transmission clutch pack would. You get hydraulic oil feeding the clutch pack, it pushes a piston, and it compresses all the clutches together, which drives the entire assembly after it's applied. Now, there's two different clutch housings on this tractor, and they take different sized O-rings for the shaft that goes through the center of the clutch pack, and I'm 80% positive that's where it got screwed up, because when I took it apart the first time, I pulled the O-rings off and I thought it looked a little smaller, and I'm like, you know what, that's the one the dealer gave me. It's got to be right. You know, they looked it up. They looked all the part numbers up. It has to be right. So I put it in there, and I had tested it, and I'm thinking, it seems like it's leaking a lot, but I figure, I'm like, well, hydraulic oil is a lot thicker than air, so maybe it'll be fine. And it was for about a year or two. But under load, it slipped a couple times, and I think it just disintegrated the clutches. I mean, you slip these clutches under load a couple times and they're toast. So I would bet one of those two O-rings was the wrong size, because the other clutch pack, the O-ring is just a little bit thicker for the different design, and I'm sure that's got to be where it's messed up. It's either that or the housing's cracked. So that's it for this video. We're going to tear it apart in another video so we can do more detail on that, and hopefully we can figure out what exactly went wrong so that it doesn't happen again, because I'm not doing this a third time. Does it a third time, it's going right to the junkyard, or part out, probably part out, or a lawn ornament. Anyways, if you're new here, thanks for watching. If you've been here before, thanks for coming back. We'll see you next time. That's what the inside of the tractor looks like. Look at the size of them gears. And look at all that clutch material at the bottom. Woo! Not good.